Okay, let's start by talking about the elephant in the room. DIRECTV originated the NFL Sunday Ticket package. They were the ones who started it. They had an exclusive on it until the current season. And all of a sudden, starting with the 2023 season, Google has it. Well, why is that? Well, it's because DIRECTV has always been about creating value for the customer. And it's pretty obvious when you look at what Google is charging for NFL Sunday Ticket that the price for DIRECTV customers would have been so high that they couldn't provide that value. So they needed to find other ways to provide value to the customer and still be the sports leader. The question is, have they done it consistently, and are they doing it now with their new Sports Central app? DIRECTV has a long history of including interactive content in their receivers. You got to go back to the late 20th century and right around the turn of the 21st century. Cable boxes were nothing but channel changing devices. They didn't do anything. And along comes DIRECTV, and their boxes did more. You could set timers with it. You could have some of them had horoscopes. It was, it was crazy. But you got to remember that nobody had smartphones. They hadn't been invented. And this kind of interactive content was extremely new and extremely cool. One of the things that came from this time was the original DIRECTV score guide. This was an interactive app that showed sports scores on screen, and that was something that hadn't been done before. You could actually pick which teams you wanted to see, and it would update almost in real time. Now, putting yourself in the pre-smartphone phase of mind, that was pretty awesome. And I used it myself. At times I couldn't get the game that I really wanted because it was blacked out and there was nothing I could do about it. But that was only going to go so far in the smartphone era. This is what Score Guide looks like now, and it's fine for what it is. It's cool. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not as good as your phone. To combat that, DIRECTV came up with an all-new sports app. And this is not the subject of this video. This is the previous sports app. It's still available. If you go into the menu and you look for it, you can find it under sports, and you'll see the ability to check on all the games that are available on DIRECTV, set them to record, set your favorite teams, and it covers pretty much every single major sport out there. And it's great, and it's cool, and it works, and it still has. And yet, is it the thing that you really want in the smartphone era out of an interactive experience? Well, maybe not. And that's why we now have Sports Central. Sports Central is something that's only available on DIRECTV's new Gemini boxes. These are the boxes that let you watch DIRECTV and also use your favorite streaming apps all in one box, all with one remote, and you don't have to worry about switching inputs or any of that stuff. It's only available on Gemini. I'll talk about why in just a minute. First, let's talk about what Sports Central is. Right now, Sports Central is limited just to NFL, but I have a feeling that's going to roll out to other sports as those seasons begin. It was really much more important that they get started on NFL, and now that they've done that, I'm sure that they're going to move into other sports, and by the time you get into basketball season, baseball season, hockey season, you're probably going to see that stuff coming up on Sports Central also. You get a lot more than just an interactive recording guide with Sports Central. Here's something that really talks about DIRECTV's commitment to the customer. You look at this and it's showing you games that are available on other services, not just DIRECTV. If it's on YouTube, they'll show you it's on YouTube. Now, you can't record it right through the box, but at least you know where the game is going to be if it's not going to be on DIRECTV. If it is going to be on DIRECTV, you can set it up to record. And that in itself is worth the price of admission, especially since the price of admission is $0.00. But you get more too. You get a look at the odds, and this is updated constantly. if you're into fantasy football, or if you're in a state where it's legal to place bets, you can use this stuff to try to figure out how your bets are going to be placed and who's going to win, who's going to lose, what are the over-unders, all of that stuff. And that's not something that you will find in any other streaming or cable box kind of situation. This is only exclusive to DIRECTV. It's really kind of a neat thing. And what I like about it is it's fast. Number one, there's practically no loading time. It just comes up. It's all there. Number two, it shows you every game. It's not just the ones that you can record. And number three, it just plain works. This is one of those things, it's not in a beta. It's not pretending to be in a test phase. They rolled it out and it works. And how often does that happen? Not very often, let's be honest. But you got to understand why this is Gemini only. Well, in order to do that, you got to look back in the past. Again, going way, way back to the 20th century, cable boxes were just very simple appliances, very similar to microwave ovens, where you pushed a button and something happened. Around the turn of the 21st century, you started to see these boxes become more general purpose computing devices that are just running an app on top of them. And they didn't look any different. They didn't act any different to the consumer. But most of these boxes, and especially the ones from DIRECTV starting in the early 2000s, run Linux, which is a general purpose operating system. Was originally designed, the parent of it was originally designed to run telephone systems. So it runs in very, very little RAM with very, very little processor needs, and it runs very, very stable. So this makes it perfect for what they call embedded electronics, like cable boxes. When you turn on the box, it runs an app that gives you the whole experience. This gives a company like DIRECTV the ability to provide you with software updates on the regular. And let's be honest, no one's perfect. Bugs are going to happen, so things get fixed instead of you having to buy a whole new thing, so it gets fixed. And it also gives you the ability to roll out new features. And over the years, DIRECTV has tried a whole bunch of new features, not just the score guide and the sports app that I showed you before, but at one point they even had like a games mix where you could play games, and they weren't very good, but it was something. They were trying it. This approach of running an app on a general purpose computing device is something that pretty much every piece of home theater gear does now. If you wonder why everything that you have needs updates, it's because it's running on general purpose hardware and they haven't had time to work out all the bugs yet. And so you got to network it, you got to update it. That's just kind of the downside to the modern way of looking at things. But the problem is that going with Linux on an inexpensive embedded box is only going to take you so far. DIRECTV worked exclusively with Linux until the late 2010s when the Gemini came out. Now, Gemini isn't based on Linux. It's based on an operating system called Android TV, which is a very close cousin to the Android OS that probably runs your smartphone. If it doesn't run yours, it runs one of your friends' smartphones. No offense here to iPhone lovers. The point is that Android is a really stable backbone for this kind of thing, but it's a lot more powerful than Linux. It requires better hardware, it requires a more robust graphics structure, and a more expensive box. But that's okay because we are 20 years into this, and so that we can make more powerful stuff less expensively than we ever did before. So it's not a problem. And obviously it's not a problem because you have streaming boxes all over the place that run operating systems like this. And they all work. They work great. When you turn on a Gemini, it's running an app called Gemini. And that app gives you live television, and it just acts like a regular DIRECTV box. This isn't magic because if you think about it, it's always been running an app. It used to run it on Linux. Now it's running on Android TV. But what we're starting to see now is that the better processor speed, the more robust hardware of the Gemini can enable more features, stuff that the older hardware just couldn't do. I mean, looking back at even a modern HR54 DVR, it's just not that powerful. It's nowhere near as powerful as your average tablet or even your average phone. So a Gemini's got a lot more processor power and memory and storage and all the things you need to create interactive experiences. And that's what DirecTV has done here. I think that when you look at Sports Central, it's just the beginning of what's possible with the Gemini architecture, because you've got so much more power to work with. There's so much more you can do. And it's exciting because I think that DirecTV will leverage this to provide new experiences, not just with sports, but with all sorts of other stuff. You could see that they were able to port the original DirecTV experience over, and now if they wanted to, they could completely change that experience, give you something that looked completely different in a user interface. They could add a whole bunch of stuff. They could even give you the ability to have pointing devices or use your phone as a remote or any of that stuff that you kind of expect out of modern streaming hardware. And the beginning of it is something like Sports Central. If you have a Gemini, I would encourage you to take a look at Sports Central. If you press the home button, you're going to see it there. And it's one of those things that just works. If you're not a football fan, check it out anyway, because this is a great way to see where they're going to go with this kind of hardware, this kind of development. It's really kind of cool. I personally like it a lot. It's made my football watching easier this season, especially since I'm looking at multiple services in order to get what I want. We all are, and that's okay. One last thing I want to bring up. NFL Sunday Ticket is available to residential customers through YouTube. And I'm not here to talk about YouTube or Google or any of that stuff. I work for a DirecTV dealer, solidsignal.com, and we offer NFL Sunday Ticket to commercial customers through DirecTV, same as we always have. If you're interested in NFL Sunday Ticket and you haven't got it yet, well, call us at 888-233-7563. We'll get you hooked up, because there's no reason that your bar or restaurant or waiting room or even factory floor should be without NFL Sunday Ticket, because it's just as easy and just as reliable as it always has been. Call the folks at solidsignal.com, find out more. They're the sponsors of this video, and shop at solidsignal.com for everything you need for DirecTV service and a whole bunch more.